Hello to everyone. In this video, I'm visiting Abu Simbel temple. I took a separate tour for here to visit Abu Simbel. Rest of my group, they were not with me in this trip. The guide that we have is gonna describe the place into detail. This video was taken on January 2000.
Control of the mines of gold and to be closer of the Nubians or to protect Hathor against their troubles, their revolutions. That was the actual reason made Ramses married Nefertari, and that's why also he built the two temples here. You know that the Egyptians settled on the Nile banks from ancient times. They started step by step making controlling projects to get the benefits of the Nile water and to avoid its dangers. Until the modern history in 1902, when they finished building the old dam of Aswan, 1902. In the time, the water of the Nile south of the dam raised and reached it to 120 meters above the Mediterranean Sea level. But in 1960, when they started building the high dam, or the new one, and making this artificial lake of Nasser, this lake was created because of the dam. In the time, the water was raising once again and reached it to the maximum height of the lake. That was about 183 meters above the Mediterranean Sea level. In the time, the rising water covered all of the Nubian area from Aswan to the border to Sudan and started entering location. The water started entering, not submerged the whole temple, but just entering and raising day by day. That's why the government of Egypt, through the UNESCO, they made a conference in Paris in 1962. They argued the whole nations to save Abu Simbel. But before starting, they discussed a lot of suggestions, lots of solutions to save this temple, especially those two temples here, because they were completely different than any one of the others. As you see, also originally, they were carved inside the rock, or rock-hewn temples. That's why it was so difficult to reconstruct them somewhere else. After discussing the whole suggestions, finally they chose the Swedish idea was the best and the economic suggestion. They chose only the Swedish idea, but 5 companies cooperated in this project from different countries, Egyptian, American, Italian, German and French. They started 1963. First of all, they started by building a Hathor dam fronting the two temples, or a steel dam by a height of 68 meters. That was, of course, by the old location. They built a steel dam just to reserve the water facing the two temples, or fronting the two temples. After building that dam, or after reserving the water, they had to cut the higher parts of the mountain first, because the temple was carved originally inside a mountain, but too high than this one. The original mountain was higher. That's why they had to cut the higher parts of the mountain first to reach till the temple itself. But before cutting the mountain, they covered this facade, or the whole facade, by sand, because they were afraid of the mountain not to fall down and crash the statues. That's why they covered this facade by sand. Then they continued cutting the mountain by using heavy chainsaws till they reached it till about 80 centimeters over the roof of the temple. It was 80 started cutting the temple itself, but by using hand saws or manually. They did the same with the two sides of the mountain till they reached again to 80 centimeters walls thickness. But before cutting the walls, they covered the inside seams by plastic and fiberglass just to protect them. And they supported the roof by using steel beams, steel bars. Then they cut the walls into great seams. Well, they dismantled the big temple. They cut the big temple, just the temple itself, not the mountain. The big one to 1,063 pieces. And the small temple, which we'll visit later, to 360 average of the weight from 7 to 30 tons. After that, they numbered each piece. Then they started craning, transferring the pieces by using cranes 63 meters up, 63 meters vertically over the maximum height of the lake, and a couple of 100 meters to the back, or horizontally. So the old location of this temple was about 200 meters from here, that direction by the edge of the lake over there, and down below by the edge of this place 200 meters, and down below 63 meters. Now it's underwater. That was the old side of the temple. After moving the whole piece from here, and after leveling this part of the land, they started reconstructing the temple again piece by piece, or they started gluing the pieces again by using special material in between to glue the pieces together, not cement. When they started the reconstruction, they started by the last or the sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, and ended with this facade. So they did the opposite, just to keep the same axis of the temple. After finishing the reconstruction of the temple, just the building itself by 80 centimeters, walls and roof thickness, they recovered or reinforced the outside walls by a layer of cement, just to give it a big thickness, a little bit. Then they wanted to put the mountain again over the roof of the temple to give the original form, which was before, or the mountain form. But they discovered that if they put the mountain, the roof will not be able to carry the mountain once again. I mean, the weight will destroy the temple. That's why they thought about building a concrete dome or a pointed roof. You can't see it here, but we'll visit it later. Just a concrete dome to carry the weight of the artificial hill. So all of this, just a man-made mountain carried by a concrete dome. Let's imagine this is the roof of the temple after the reconstruction, and they built a concrete dome here. So now there is a space in between the roof of the temple and the mountain itself, which is carried by the dome. So no weight or pressure directly over the roof. You got it a little bit? Well, they finished the whole project in September 68. They opened the temple once again for visiting. So from 63 to 68, 5 years. Now we have an idea about that project, but I know you can't imagine it completely. You'll get the complete imagination, and we'll talk much more about this project when we visit the concrete dome at the end of the visit. Here is the facade, or the exterior of the big temple. We see 4 huge statues, 4 colossi, the 4 for Ramses II himself, sitting up on the throne, wearing the double crown of Hathor. The second statue by the left-hand side is destroyed because of the famous earthquake, which happened in 27th BC, 27th before Christ, but they didn't have to restore it again. You see there is a part of the head and the face falling down there. See them? Actually, the face crashed into small pieces, so no features at all. If they restore it, it would be just a modern face. That's why they put it as it was by the old location. Between the legs of Ramses, small statues for some of his royal family, some of his wives, sons and daughters. In the middle of the facade, inside the niche, that great statue for the sun god Ra, the falcon-headed god wearing the sun disk up on his head. That's the sun god and the main god of this temple. That's in the middle. Along the top of the facade, below the edge of the mountain, there is a row of baboons sitting and raising their hands. Can you see them up there? Actually, they're raising their hands worshipping the sun god, because the ancient Egyptians noticed that the baboons woke up early in the early morning before the sunrise, and as soon as the sunrise with the first rays of the sun, they noticed that the baboons were jumping, shouting, screaming and making noise. Since then, they imagined or they believed that they were welcoming the sun or saluting the sun rays, and they considered the baboon as a symbol of the sun god. The height of this facade 33 meters, but the height of each one of the statues just 20 meters, with the base of the throne 22 meters high. Here we see 4 statues. Why 4? That means that each one was protecting one of the borders or the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. That's why we see 4 colossi or 4 huge statues. Any questions about the exterior? So let's go inside, and we'll be back again here for having photos of the throne of Ramses. At this side, you see those figures of the Asiatic captives or slaves. Look at the features, different features. That means different countries. And this is the northern direction, and I told you that's the north. That's why he's depicting the Asiatic, and he's hanging them or tying their necks by using a rope ended with the symbol of the north, the papyrus flower. But if you look at the southern side or the southern direction, the African captives, look at the features, African features, and here he's using the symbol of the south or the lotus flower. So the one of lower Egypt or the north is the papyrus, upper Egypt or the south, the symbol is the lotus. Over there we see 2 cartouches. The cartouche, this rectangular thing, which is containing the name of the king. Here we see 2 cartouches are containing the 2 names of Ramses, the birth name and the coronation name. The first one is the birth name. It's a difficult, the pronunciation of this name is difficult by the hieroglyphic. Wesser Ma'at Ra Seti bin Ra. That means the power and the justice which belong to the sun god Ra. That was the birth name. But the most important one, or the famous name, is the coronation one, Ramses. Actually, Ramses is a Greek pronunciation, but the actual pronunciation of Ramses is Ra-Meses. Ra-Meses means literally the baby or the child of the sun god Ra, Ra-Meses. Over there, we see 2 figures of the god Habi, both of the 2 figures. For Habi was the god of the Nile. Let's imagine he was the Nile itself. So he was and still unificating the 2 parts of Egypt, upper and lower Egypt. So look at this scene. Habi at this side in front of the god Habi, we see the lotus flowers, the symbol of upper Egypt. The other side, the papyrus flowers, the one of lower Egypt. In the middle, this is the lung. So he's tying them, never ever separate, as the Nile is doing. He's unifying or unificating the 2 parts of Egypt. Well, you can use the normal camera inside, but without flash, and video camera is allowed. This is the key of the temple. It's not original one, it's a modern key. But actually, it's representing the map of Egypt, or the last interpretation about this key, that it's representing the map of Egypt or the Nile itself. If you look at the map of Egypt, you'll find it goes the same. Here is the river Nile of Upper Egypt, the 2 banks of the Nile, the eastern and western bank. In the middle, you see Memphis, the ancient capital of Egypt. Those are the 2 main branches of the Nile Delta or the Delta of Lower Egypt, and here is the Mediterranean Sea or the northern borders. So the key of life is representing the Nile, and of course the Nile means life for the Egyptians. Its name by the hieroglyphic is Ankh, which means also life. Of course, this is a wooden door. Okay?
No flash.
Is there any astrological sign on this temple?
No.
No, not at
No,
all.
not like the other temples. Okay, so this is the first and the main section inside this temple, the first and the biggest hall. We have 4 sections here. I'll show you all of them, but this is the first and the biggest one. This one was allowed to enter by the... No flash, please, don't use the flash. Well, the first and the main section. As you see, or this one was allowed to enter by the public people or the commoners. That's why we are going to see all the scenes inside this section, just military scenes. You'll find Ramses did something like a political propaganda for himself. He's describing his victories, especially the famous battle of Kadesh against the Hittites at the north of Syria. But why Ramses did this propaganda in here, that was because of the Nubians. As I told you, they were making revolutions against the pharaohs to get their independence. But they were allowed to enter this section, the first hall. That's why Ramses just wanted to show them his military force, in order not to think to make a revolution or any troubles against him. As you see, The roof is, anybody has a torch? No? Torch? You see the roof is supported by 8 square pillars, 4 each side. Fronting each pillar, we see this. It's okay, no problem. So we see in front of each pillar, fronting each one, we see this great statue for Ramses II himself, but in the position of the god Osiris, or the mummified position, that's the position of the mummy. Those statues by a height of 9 meters. We can see a lot of graffiti on the statues, names. Everywhere, inside or outside of the temple, you'll find a lot of graffiti. Those were the visitors since 1817, because this temple since the 26th dynasty was 650 BC till 1817 AD was under a heap of sand. Discovered by an Italian scholar, and later I'll tell you the story of the discovery. So since then, for a long time, the temple was not under supervision, no guards, for a long time. That's why the visitors were always coming and carved the names. All the scenes in here, as I told you, just military scenes, but I'll show you the most important and wonderful scenes in here. We have the most wonderful scenes on the southern wall. All the scenes on the northern wall, we can have a look at them at the end of the visit. Just small scenes, you'll not distinguish all of them very well, showing a crowd or a part of the Battle of Kadesh between the Egyptian army and the Hittites from fighting together. But you can have a look at them at the end of the visit. We have the most wonderful scenes on the southern wall. First, have a look at that one there. You see Ramses II in a big size, smiting some of the African captives or African slaves and offering them to Ammon, the chief of the gods and the principal one of Thebes. We have the same scene on the other side, on the other wall. But the difference that the captives here are just Asiatic captives. The northern direction, always the Asiatic, the southern side, the African captives or slaves. And here Ramses is offering them to Ra, the sun god and the main god of this temple. Well, let's see the wonderful scenes on this side, at this side on the southern wall.
Both the engravings here are for Ramses.
I'm sorry? No, Ramses is giving the captives to the god Ammon, the two one figures, Ammon, the chief of the gods. Okay. Well, here is one of the wonderful scenes. Ramses II over his famous chariot attacking a fortress. That's the castle of the enemies. But look at them, the enemies, they are trying to jump and run away. One of them down here, just leading his cattle, trying to find somewhere to hide. Over there, down there. If you look at Ramses himself here, you'll notice that Ramses got 2 arms. 2 arrows and 2 bows. He has 2 arms, arrows and bows, not only one. Actually, that was not a mistake. Here Ramses is just showing us that he was fighting by help of his god, the sun god Ra, so he's depicting the 2 powers. The power of himself and the invisible power of the sun god was fighting with him. That's why we see a couple of arms, arrows and bows. For the same reason we see the sun disk behind the neck of the horse, which is representing the power of the god Ra was fighting with him. Actually, Ramses recorded that he got the victory against the Hittites. I mean, he defeated them. And the Hittites recorded on their monuments in Syria that they defeated Ramses as well. But we knew from the other documents that both of them were lying. We knew that Ramses and the Hittites, after 15 years fighting, they made a treaty of peace. And finally, Ramses married one of the daughters of the Hittite kings. That was the truth. Not as he said, rather than they recorded, but of course the king always is talking about his victories, everyone even was defeated or not. So behind Ramses you see some of his sons over their chariots are fighting with the king, but of course smaller than the king himself. You see there is a line, that line between all of those scenes over there and these scenes here. That line, suppose those are the people and the pharaohs living up in the air. So between them, the blue line of the sky. The second scene is a very wonderful one as well, okay? Fighting 2 strong men. They have the same size as the pharaoh, not smaller. Normally the enemy is supposed to be smaller. But look at those, they have the same size of Ramses. That means they were not normal enemies, they were kings or leaders. That's why they are the same size. But look at Ramses here. He's very trying to reflect, to represent his power with big muscles, wearing the false hair, like the parents of the Lord nowadays, grasping this one, like he's asking the Betty or the Mercy or the Pharaoh not to kill him, and smashing the other one under his feet. So a very wonderful scene, just reflecting the power of Ramses, especially to the Nubians. I told you inside this section, especially to the Nubians. And by the way, the guides, we are joking, calling this scene Rambo 3. Did you see the movie The Rambo? Sylvester Stallone. He's literally trying to reflect his power. But let's see the last one here. Well, here Ramses again over the chariots, but completely different than the first one. The first one over there, Ramses is fighting and the horse is attacking. But look at Ramses here. He's so relaxed, even the horse. Because here he returned back from one of his battles against the Africans. He's returning back home after having the victory, so this is the triumphal march. In front of the chariot, we see one of his soldiers holding a stick and striking or leading 2 rows of African captives in front of the chariot. That's why he's so relaxed and happy. And here we see a lion. This lion is the symbol of the victory of Ramses II, just running like a dog, as you see beside the horse. Inside this temple we have a lot of sides or lateral rooms, besides rooms. All of those rooms were like storage or store rooms to store the religious documents, clothes, jewelry, offerings, food, perfume, and the whole things the priests were using during the rituals of the temple, because most of the priests were living inside or surrounding the temple to do the daily rituals. All the side rooms are the same. I mean, the structure is the same, everything is the same, but we have just one room inside this temple is different than the others. Inside here, okay? Well, so this is the only different room. It's the only one with niches inside the walls, a lot of niches. All the others are just flat, just normal, like the one beside us. But this is the only one with those niches, because this room was something like a bibliotheca or a library, just to store the religious documents which made papyrus scrolls inside those niches. But if you look at the wall facing each niche, we're supposed to find a scene depicting Ramses offering to different gods. For example, facing this niche, Ramses offering to Ra. Then facing the other one, to Hathor, and to Horus. What I mean that, facing each niche, there is a different god. That means each god has a special niche, supposed to store its religious documents inside, something like filing system nowadays, or the index, to be easy for the priests to get the document they need according to the festival which belongs to any one of the gods. Just having a look at the scene and get what he needs quickly. All the other side rooms are the same, but without niches. And we have another one at the other side of the temple, just unfinished room. I mean, the walls or the reliefs is still unfinished, because this temple took originally in building 67 years. The whole period of Ramses II, as soon as he ascended the throne until he died. So when he died, nobody was caring about completing the temple. That's why we have a B-side room still unfinished on the other side until now. Okay. Maybe. والله بيبقى في خناقات كتير بقى بالمجموعات مع المرشدين، لكن انا اصلا صوت كده يعني. Temple, as you see, the floor is a little bit higher than the first one. Not the wooden, even the original one is higher than the first one. Till the sanctuary is supposed to get the highest floor and lowest ceiling. Look at the ceiling is getting lower. So the temple is going like a laying pyramid or laying pyramidal shape. This one was allowed to enter by the nobles and some categories of the priests, not by the public people or the commoners as the first one. Just the nobles and some of the priests. That's why we'll find the scenes in here, just religious scenes and not military, religious scenes. But the wonderful thing that is starting from this section, Ramses made the third miracle. As the Egyptologists said that we have 3 miracles inside this temple, 2 ancient ones, and the third one is the modern one of the reconstruction. The 2 ancient miracles, the first one is the phenomena of the sun, which is happening twice a year inside this temple. I'll explain to you inside the sanctuary. The second ancient one is the one of Ramses, when he put himself in the god's form or deified himself during his life. Never happened before. We've never saw that in all of the ancient Egyptian mythology. Normally the pharaoh considered as a complete god in that time, but after his death, during his life they considered the pharaoh just the son of the god, could be the shade. So that, okay, could be the shade of the god upon the earth, the agent, but not as a complete god before dying, and when after dying supposed to associate with the gods in the underworld to be a complete god. So Ramses declared that for the first time during his life. But it was not a miracle if he just said, I'm the God. It's so easy for any one of us to say, I'm a God. But the miracle that he convinced the people, or the public people, the commoners, that he was a God. What I mean that he got control of their minds, although there were a lot of religious traditions engraved in them. But he convinced them, of course, by helping of the priests. Not alone by himself, but with the priests. So you have to know what is the difference between the gods and pharaohs. If you look at any scene, for example, that one, look at this scene here. We see Ramses in front of three gods, the Teriad of Thebes, Ammon, Khonsu, and Mut. But look at the pharaoh here. Excuse me. So look at the pharaoh, supposed to be in a lower position than the gods. The gods are higher. Okay. The gods are higher a little bit on a pedestal. The second thing, that the pharaoh is supposed to wear a sandal in his feet. That's it. Because he's living up on the earth, supposed to wear a sandal. But the gods are living at the paradise. Don't need wearing a sandal. Last thing, anyone can hold the key of life, but if that one was facing a god, that means they are equated with each other. According to this law, which the ancient Egyptian artists were distinguished between the gods and pharaohs. If you look at the scenes on the columns, for example this one, of course most of the scenes on the columns, Ramses facing different gods. But if you, for example this one here, Ramses in front of the god Horus, but he had the same level of Horus, wearing no sandals and holding a key of life. That means he put himself in the god's form, preparing to deify himself completely inside the sanctuary. Over there on this wall, we see that scene which is showing Ramses II offering different offerings to the god Amun-Men. This is not Amun-Ra, has the same two long feathers of Amun-Ra, but this one was Amun-Men, sometimes was called as Men-Amun, the god of the fertility in ancient Egypt. Every kind of fertility of the groups, that's why he's supposed to get the dark green color, which is representing the fertility of the groups and sexual fertility. Of course, it's clear. So this one was Amun-Men, the god of the fertility. Behind him, the god Khonsu, the moon god, and the goddess Isis. On this wall, we have a very wonderful colored scene. The same one at the other side, but this one is much brighter. Here we see the procession of the sacred boat, or the solar bark, the sun boat. A general idea about the sun boat in ancient Egypt, that the ancient Egyptians believed that they imagined that the power of the sun god Ra, represented at the sun disk, was carrying over a sacred boat, but a hidden one. They can't see it. As soon as the sun rises from the east to the west for 12 hours, and after the sunset in the underworld during the night, to come back again next morning from the east and continue the circle. They imagined that the sun disk was not moving freely, but just up on a boat. That was a general idea about the sun boat. Of course, we have a lot of details. Here we see the procession of that boat, because this temple belonged to the god Ra, the sun god. That's why we have to find those kind of scenes. The procession of the sacred boat, carried by the priests during the festivals. In front of the procession, Ramses II just burning incense to dismiss the evil souls. Behind Ramses, Nefertari holding two musical instruments. We are calling them the sistrum. You know, nowadays they are exactly just like the rattles with the kids. You know, the rattles with something like cries inside. So she's making joy by those two musical instruments, and he's burning incense to dismiss the evil souls. Above the head of the king, we see the vulture, or the goddess of protection, Nekhbet, one of the goddesses of protection, just protecting the king by the wings. And over there we see a row of cartouches at the upper bar, row of cartouches of Ramses II. Each one is protected by the goddess Wajid, the serpent goddess. Again, we can see the lines or the cutting marks here. You see them, those straight lines. Okay, let's see the sanctuary. Well, let's get closer to see the scene before entering to the sanctuary, please. Well, before entering to the sanctuary, I just would like to show you this god. This is the god Betah. Betah was the god of Memphis. But if you look at any scene containing this god Betah, you'll find him always in the scenes as depicting inside a rectangular shape. As you see, something like a closed box or a chapel. Because one of its main functions that Betah was the god of darkness, always don't like the sun or the light. That's why always was depicting inside this closed box. So remember this point that Betah was the god of darkness because it is one of the important gods inside the sanctuary. Here we have two small side rooms, empty rooms, unfinished, were like storage also inside this temple. The sanctuary or the Holy of Holies, the most important room inside the temple, supposed to be the darkest room. No one was allowed to enter this section except the king or the pharaoh and the high priest of the temple. No one else, just the king and the high priest. There was a door supposed to close each section. You see those two holes even there for fixing the door, wooden door, sometimes gilded, to close each section separately. So inside the sanctuary in the middle you'll find a granite square block where they were putting the offerings for the gods. Sometimes was using as an altar. We have 4 statues inside here. Okay, let's see this. So the altar could be an offering table. At this side we see the scene of the sacred boat. In front of it, Ramses as a king fronting his deified self. The same scene of the boat at the other side, on the other wall, but in front of the boat, Ramses is getting sperm or getting fertility from the god of the fertility, Amun. Again, 4 statues here from the right to the left. The first one at the right is the god Ra, the sun god and the main god of this temple, the falcon-headed god wearing the sun disk up on his head. The second one is the god or the deified Ramses II himself, never having before inside any sanctuary, sitting together, equated himself with the other gods. That's the second one. The third one with the 2 long feathers over his head is Amun, the chief of the gods and the principal one of Thebes. The last one, whose face is damaged, is the god Betah, the one of darkness. If you remember, that god was always depicting inside the closed box, Betah of darkness. So Ra, Ramses, Amun, and then Betah of darkness. The miracle of the sun, the phenomena of the sun, which is happening twice a year inside this temple, 21st of February and 21st of October. 21st of February was the coronation day of Ramses II. In February, the rays of the sun, as soon as the sun rises in the early morning, the first rays were entering from the door, penetrating the first and second sections about 68 meters through the mountain till the sanctuary for shining or to hit firstly the god Ra, because it was the sun god and the main god of this temple, and stay 12 minutes. Then transferred to Ramses II himself for 7 minutes. After that, a little bit to the left, for shining over the god Amun and Ramses, both of them, for 5 minutes, then goes down, slowly disappeared from the fingers outside of the temple. That was in February, the coronation day, 21st of February, the coronation day of Ramses. But 21st of October, the birthday of Ramses II, the same scene was happening. But in October, the rays, after penetrating the 2 sections, were doing the opposite. First, start by Amun-Ra for 12 minutes, then Ramses 7 minutes, after that Ra and Ramses again 5 minutes, and down disappeared outside of the temple, but both of the 2 times never touched the 4th one, the god Betah, because this one, as we said, don't like the sun or the light. It was the one of darkness. That was before the reconstruction. But after the reconstruction, the axis changed a little bit. Maybe they tried to calculate it very good, but they didn't do it professionally, or anyhow, it's a mistake happened So this miracle is still happening after the reconstruction, but in 22nd of February and 22nd of October, and it's the 21st, so one day later. So with the computer and the whole modern technology, we did this mistake. But it's still a miracle to do all of this within 5 years. You know, not last October, but the October before, we were receiving more than 4,000 persons outside of the temple. We were waiting for the sun. In the early morning, 4,000 persons, but the sun was off. Lots of clouds and nothing happened. It was a bad day for them. So sorry for talking so much and getting you a headache. Well, you have 5 minutes, please, following inside the temple. Just try to see the left-hand side. 5 minutes, we'll meet outside and visit the small one together.
The safest. Okay.
Yeah.
So
We are not sure if Ramses was the Pharaoh of Moses or not. They said that the Pharaoh of Moses was, drowned in the Red Sea, and they found the body of the mummy of Moses, of Ramses, it just salty with salt in it. It is normal. They said that could be from the water, because he was resting in the water, under the water. The second thing, that Ramses was the one who deified himself during his life completely or clearly. And we knew from the Bible and the Quran the same.
Yes.
So those were the evidence said that Ramses could be the Pharaoh of Moses. But if we compare the time and the lots of other things said no, because there's another thing. They said that they found the mummy of Ramses goes like this, but the mummification position is supposed to get this position. They said that Ramses could be when he was trying to save himself, he was drowned, he became like this and stayed like this. So it is, those are not just, I'm not sure, and even the Egyptologists are not sure about this, if he was the Pharaoh of Moses or not. So that's all.
Let's see, you can also see they didn't use the lines like the traditional brickwork, and that's why everything's kind of a shoddy job.
فتخيل ان هو بيحيي اله الشمس، اعتبره كرمز لاله الشمس. في 24 واحد على قد 24 ساعه في اليوم.
وهنا هو سوى نفسه بقى برمز.
He just candles for lighting and hand chisels or tools. For 67 years is not enough for doing this. They're going to open it next month. Okay? The beloved one and the favorite one, as he said. But as I told you, Ramses II had a political reason to marry her. The evidence which proved that Ramses II had 34 wives and got about 200 kids. So, Nefertari was number 19 or the 19th wife. If she was the favorite and the beloved one, as he said, so why he married all of those after her or afterward? That's why I'm telling you that he just wanted to get control of the mines of gold here and to be closer of the Nubians. Here is the facade of the small temple. You see such a statues. Even here, Ramses II was a selfish man. Although this temple dedicated for Nefertari was 4 for himself and just 2 for her. I mean, he was loving her very much, as he said, but business is business, you know. So, or not more than himself. So the second one each side for Nefertari, the other 4 for Ramses. The height of those statues is 11 meters. We see here for the first time, or one of the rare times, the queen has the same height of the pharaoh. Normally the wife is supposed to be smaller, but here she considered as a goddess. That's why she has the same height, 11 meters, because she assimilated to the goddess Hathor, the cow goddess, the one of beauty, fertility, love, and music. The name Nefertari means the beauty of beauties, and not Nefertiti, because Nefertiti was the wife of Akhenaten, 18th dynasty. Her name means the most beautiful one upon the earth. But Nefertari, the wife of Ramses, 19th dynasty, her name means the beauty of beauties, but generally the word Nefer by the hieroglyphic means beauty. Okay, let's go inside. Hay cocodrilo al otro lado.
جنوبي
لا لا لا
مش فاهم في وضوحي كمان.
Okay, so this is the first and the main hall inside this temple. As you see, the roof is supported by 6 square pillars, 3 each side. At the top of each one could be a capital. We see this figure of the goddess Hathor, one of the forms of Hathor, with the face of a woman and 2 ears of a cow. We find the colors inside this temple are very well preserved. That's because of the sand. As I told you, the sand covered the 2 temples for a long time, so the sand avoided the temple from the storms, the wind, and every damage. All the scenes inside this temple, just normal scenes showing the king and sometimes the queen in front of various gods offering different offerings. Here we have just 2 military scenes. This one at the right side, Ramses grasping the African captive or the slave and offering him to Ammon. The other side with the Asiatic one offering him to Horus. If you noticed inside the big temple we have the same 2 scenes but with lots of captives, not only one. Here we see just one because this temple was a female temple, feminine one, not allowed to enter by men, even the reliefs supposed to be female, except Ramses II himself, of course, everywhere. Even inside this temple we have the most important and wonderful scenes on the southern wall. Let's see this one first, at the back of the column here. A very wonderful colored scene of Nefertari holding that musical instrument again and wearing the crown of Hathor, which is containing the 2 long horns, the sun disk and the 2 feathers. Look at the yellow, red, black colors. Look at her makeup. All the colors are original colors, untouched, and still very well preserved as you see. This is one of the important scenes as well. The coronation of Ramses as a king by 2 main gods. As a king because of the law which I told you about, lowers and the gods and wearing a sandal. He's crowning as a king by Horus, the god of every good thing, and the god Seth, the evil god. They're crowning Ramses and offering something looks like a stick. Actually, this stick was the symbol of the eternity or the eternal life in ancient Egypt. The stick itself goes like this or this. We are calling it by the hieroglyphic rembit, which means a year. That's the stick itself. As you see on the stick, a lot of dashes. Each dash means 100 by the hieroglyphics, so 100, 100, 100. At the bottom, we see something looks like a frog. Actually, it is not a frog. It has a tail. It's the second stage of the frog called tadbul. You know that tadbul? The tadbul, اللي هو أبو زنيبة عندنا في العربي, means 1000 by the hieroglyphic. Each dash means 100. The stick itself, a year, so millions of years, wishing to Ramses by those 2 main gods. Well, the second, حضرتك هتخش هنا؟ يا ريت معلش هنيجي كده. Okay, let's get closer this side. Offering papyrus flowers and that musical instrument again to the goddess of mines of gold, Anukit. Anukit was the goddess of mines of gold and was also the wife of the ram-headed god, the god of Elephantine Island or the god of Aswan, Honom. The last scene at this side, not one of the wonderful colored scenes, but one of the rare scenes, this one here, okay? Come closer, please. So Ramses here is offering a symbol to Ammon. Look at this symbol, a woman sitting a feather over her head, holding a key of life. This was the goddess Ma'at, the goddess of justice and truth. So Ramses offering this symbol to Ammon. Ammon was the chief of the gods. And raising his other hand, Ramses is raising his other hand. That's why it is one of the rare scenes as he's swearing or promising that he's going to rule Egypt by justice and by truth in front of the chief of the gods. And again we see the vulture or the goddess of protection above the head of the king, just protecting the king above the head or by its wings. Okay? The masterpiece inside this temple, or the best scene, we see the coronation of Nefertari as a goddess, according to the law, the same label, and holding a key of life. She is crowning as a goddess by two main goddesses, the goddess Isis, the wife of Osiris, and Hathor, the cow goddess, but in a human form. Look at those two main goddesses. No difference between them. Isis and Hathor, the same crown, face, body. The only difference between Isis and Hathor is the name. The name of Isis, over there something looks like a seat or the chair. The chair is the name of Isis, Isis or Isis. And the name of Hathor, that is square. There's a square. Inside the square there is a falcon. Its name was Huther, or the house of Horus, the falcon-headed god. And the ancient Egyptians gave them the same features because they considered both of them the goddesses of motherhood, Isis and Hathor. Here we have two small side rooms, one each side, were like storage, empty rooms, unfinished, nothing inside. Above the door of each one, we see the winged sun disk, one of the ancient Egyptian symbols of protection, and that scene of Nefertari offering papyrus flowers to Hathor in a full form of a cow up on the boat. Look at the symmetry. We have the same scene on the other wall, but Ramses himself instead of Nefertari, who's offering to Hathor. This is a normal scene. Ramses giving 2 jars of perfume and sacred oil, sometimes pure water and milk, to the god Ammon. But look at the dress of Ammon, the detail of the red color, the decoration, still very well preserved, as you see. The sanctuary of this temple, or the Holy of Holies, preceded by the Egyptian corniche, or the Cavetto corniche, and just the smallest sanctuary in all of the ancient Egyptian monuments, just a small room containing one statue, but mixed statue. I mean, consists of 2 parts. The higher part of the statue is the head of a cow. This is Hathor wearing its crown coming out of the rock. The lower part is just small standing statue for Ramses II. So it's a very damaged statue, but you can imagine it. Hathor is protecting the king Ramses beneath its head. But as you see, this room is destroyed, lots of damage in it because of the water which was entering here 2 months a year during the inundation season. Also the water reached this one before the biggest one, because this one is lower by 4 meters, and we can see that black line or the water mark reached about that level, maybe here. Last thing, we see the ceiling here is black. That's because of the bed winds. They came here a long time ago, so many times. I told you, since they discovered the temple was not under supervision for a long time, so they were coming, resting, using it during the daily life, cooking, firing for a long time. That's why we see this black color, because of the smoke of the fire, and the Egyptian authority of antiquities tried to clean it as possible as they can. Well, just get your photos quickly, please. After that, we'll have a shortcut through the mountain to see the modern technique directly to the top. A couple of months ago, I saw one caught by the hunters was more than 4.5 meters. But the maximum length of a crocodile found here, they've got one 2 years ago, was about 8 meters, 26 feet. This one.
Oh my goodness.
Just saying that, let's see. The crocodiles never touch women.
What are they feeding?
They're feeding fish and women. So, we have a lot of fish here. You see those 2 trees, just those 2, not the others. The palm and the mimosa tree here were exactly in the same place by the old location, and they moved them here with the 2 temples as well. That's why they're dying there. Watch your step, please.
What a big project.
No problem, you can use the flash in here, it's allowed, no color.
I see. They're checking humidity of this place too?
I'm sorry?
They're keeping it in a certain level of temperature and...
No, but this one is air conditioned, you know, in summer it's hot. Inside the temple especially it's too hot, but here it's air conditioned. They I think it's free of this here. But the temple inside is supposed to get, but of course they can't get control of this, and especially in summer, it's terrible here. So this temple is so humid, a lot of people are falling down unconscious. So I don't think that they're getting control of this here. Okay, get closer here, please. Well, as I told you, first of all, they started by building a Hathor dam, fronting the two temples, or a steel dam to reserve the water. After that, they started cutting the mountain itself by using heavy chainsaws. Look at the height of the mountain, too high than the modern one. So they cut the mountain by using heavy chainsaws till they reach it till about 80 centimeters over the roof of the temple. Then they cut the temple itself, the big one to 1,063 pieces, the small one 360 from 7 to 30 tons. This is the way how they dismantled the walls themselves. After numbering the pieces, this is the old location of the temple, they raised them 63 meters vertically over the maximum height of the lake and a couple of hundred meters to the back. Then they started reconstructing the temple or gluing the pieces by the sanctuary and ended with the facade. After that, they covered the outside walls by a layer of cement to give it a big thickness. Then, instead of putting the mountain over the roof, they built this concrete dome to carry the weight of the man-made mountain. So this is the temple itself here. The first hall and the biggest, then the second one, the sanctuary behind this rock. Down here are some of the side streets, the facade behind that wall. After finishing the reconstruction, they built this concrete dome, which is carrying more than 300,000 tons of blocks and sand. And it's considered the second hugest concrete dome in all of the world. The first one in the Vatican, and this is the second one. Its height about 38 meters, and also it protects the temple from the earthquakes. The last effective earthquake happened here was in 1981. They finished the whole project September 68. The cost of this project was about $36 million. 12 million is paid by the Egyptian government. The rest of the money collected by other 50 countries through the UNESCO. More than 3,000 persons, workmen, craftsmen and engineers involved in this project. Well, this temple before 1817, as I told you, was under a heap of sands. It discovered by an Italian scholar called Giovanni Belzoni, or Giovanni Battista Belzoni. That Belzoni was settling here in a camp making excavations to find the temple, but he couldn't find it. Finally, by helping of one of his Nubian cooks, the name of that cook was Abu Ali. Remember this name, Abu Ali? The cook of Belzoni was the first one who discovered one of the baboons above the facade. When he saw that baboon, he was so frightened. So the baboon emerged out of the sand. He was so frightened, he ran away to bring Belzoni from the camp. Then Belzoni came, cleaned the sand, and discovered the temple. That was in 1817. And remember Abu Ali, because I'm going to tell you a funny story about this guy outside of the temple. Through the way out, you are going to see a lot of this machine here, and that one down there, with the wire. It is connected with another big machine at the other side called seismograph, just to know the earthquakes by vibration makes alarm 13 seconds before. And I think 13 seconds is not enough time, so let's do it.
ده المكان المعبد الاصلي.
لا ده المكان الجديد طبعا حضرتك.
ده يعني هو نقلوا المعبد هنا.
لا نقلوا المعبد هنا ولزقوا الحجاره الثاني مع بعض وادي المعبد قدام حضرتك. You know, 13 seconds is enough time for praying, but let's go now. Well, here is the sanctuary. This is the sanctuary or the holy of holies of the big temple, which is containing the 4 seated statues. That's it. هنا قدس الأقداس اللي شفناه بتاع المعبد الكبير. But haven't you ever seen something like this in one of the James Bond movies or Indiana Jones? Looks the same. Is the naming of this city. Okay. Well, last thing is the naming of this city, Abu Simbel. You remember the name of that cook, Abu Ali? It derived from the name of that cook before the time of the discovery. This city was in the eastern bank and had another name, Nubian name, but got the name of Abu Simbel since the time of the discovery because of the cook. Abu Ali, he was a very short guy, too short. Only the one who discovered the temple was an Italian, didn't know very good English. He just wanted to give him a title or a name as a short guy. So instead of short, he called him Simbel, by English something simple. It became after that with the commoners here, by the common language, Abu Simbel instead of Abu Ali. So it could be Abu Short, you know. That was all about this temple. Thank you for listening.
Ten Egyptian pound for sabak. 10 Egyptian pound. Hey, miri da che terra nota kai, miri da che.
How much?
Excuse me. Excuse me. Cierto. 20 okay.
Tape. And funny.
I know you're not done drinking.
Still export? Okay.
These are strong in them.
Okay. Oh, you want me to show you the